Winter came early to the high country, the kind that slides down from the San Miguel Range without asking, turns breath to steam and pine needles to pins. On a late October evening in 1974, 19-year-old Lila Moreno, a geology sophomore at High Plains University, stacked 2 textbooks, a heavy green coat, and a small foil-wrapped gift for her mother onto the back seat of her Datsun 240Z. The paint was sunburst orange, the sort of color you don't forget even in bad weather. Home lay just over 50 miles away in Arroyo Vista along State Route 147, a road that hews to cliffs in shadow, with few pullouts and long runs with no guardrails. Fog pooled in Redstone Gorge where the Rook River gnawed at Red Rock, and the radio bled in and out between a country ballad and static. Trucks snaked the northbound lane, headlights cutting tubes of white through the mist. Lila checked the time, eased onto the highway, and the world narrowed to asphalt river and a low hum under the hood. There's a 1-story gas station before the iron bridge, cinder block and tin roof, the neon sign flickering like it had a fever. Lila pulled in, paid with a crisp 10, and asked the attendant, Walt Dempsey, thin as fence wire, cap pulled low, the best way to Arroyo Vista with the fog coming on thick. Cross the bridge. Stay on 147 South, he said. She thanked him and rolled out. Dempsey watched her taillights vanish into gray and noticed a county Plymouth Fury, in dull brown, sliding the same way. No flashers, no siren. The quiet shadow cops, sometimes keeping weather. He jotted the time in a pocket notebook. 7:12 p.m. A minute later, a veil of wet snow scud across the lot. The little orange coupe slipped into the dark, as if someone had torn it out of the map. In Arroyo Vista, the Moreno house waited with chicken soup on simmer and a plate set aside for the daughter. Elena kept the kitchen light warm. Raphael took the porch in a gray sweater, eyes fixed on the distant ribbon of highway. 9 came and went, then 10, then 11. Calls to the dorm, to the county hospital. The highway patrol found air and nothing else. Near midnight, the sheriff's office logged a sentence that would echo for decades. Female, 19, missing on Route 147, Silver Ridge to Arroyo Vista. Dawn brought a wall of fog and pines that dripped like they were sweating. The canyon pinched the road to a taut string. Old patrol cars rolled with paper maps spread over their hoods, grease pencils and red ink for curves and mileposts. Handheld radios crackled. Polaroids waited for proof the mountain was willing to give. A helicopter lifted once, fog plating the bubble, so the pilot turned back almost as quickly as he'd gone up. Along the Rook, volunteers walked shoulder to shoulder, steel hooks dragging the margins. One officer plucked a scrap the size of 2 postage stamps from a tuft of grass, orange cloth, wet, caked, stiff with cold, and slid into a plastic bag labeled LM1 unconfirmed. There were no skid marks, no glass, no oil. The asphalt looked like it had never been touched. By afternoon, wet snow came down heavier. The helicopter made an emergency landing. Day 2, the pass locked under blizzard, search suspended until conditions improve. In the San Miguels, that could mean March. Suspended became silent. Deputy Thomas Hale took the case because that's what the rotation said. 43, soft-spoken. 15 years in, known for neat reports and steady eyes. He rang the dorms, the professors, anyone who might say Lila had a reason to leave. She didn't. He mapped her route and flagged the blind curves and missing rail. Weather, youth, gravel. These are how accidents happen. The gas station man mentioned a brown sheriff's car behind the orange Datsun. In Hale's typewritten report, that memory softened to possible patrol presence. Unconfirmed. The evidence, orange scrap, soil in envelopes, Polaroids washed of milk, went into a wooden box. The lid closed. Case 74 to 1513 took its place on a steel shelf. The Morenos wrote letters, offered to pay for divers, asked the state to look. The winter said no, the budget said no. The road ran, as if it had never swallowed a thing. Time made its trade. In 1989, Hale retired with commendation and a photograph on the wall. In the kitchen drawer of the Moreno house, Elena folded and refolded the foil of a gift that had never been unwrapped. 3.5 decades later, the state dusted off its cold cases with modern DNA and a little money. Mesa Verde County formed a unit, and Lieutenant Naomi Greer, 34, once a CSI in Denver, the kind who trusts a pet more than a hunch, walked down to the archive. The paint on the cinder block was the color of old teeth. The air had the sweet metal smell of paper and rust. She scanned shelf tags until a wooden box with a cracked but intact wax seal caught her eye. 74 to 1,513. It looked too clean. On camera, she cut the seal, glove finger steady, and lifted the lid. The orange scrap. The silver bracelet with its floral engraving. Soil envelopes. Polaroids. Smith Corona onion skin reports. Labels neat enough to cut. She sent a frayed edge of cloth, a swab from the bracelet clasp, and a pinch of soil to the state lab. 3 weeks later, the lab called and spoke in the careful tense people use when they know words have weight. Biological trace recovered. A tiny blood stain on the cloth, a hair in the bracelet engraving, both from the same male donor. Profiles met Cody's standards. The database returned a hit that arrived like a door opening onto a cliff. Thomas Hale. The sample in Cody's came from a 1990 domestic violence arrest that hadn't stuck, but had been enough to capture a cheek swab. Greer ordered a rerun and sent duplicates to Phoenix. The second lab confirmed the hair from the bracelet matched Hale. The blood's profile matched the hair. Science speaks loud. Paper whispers through the walls. Greer ran her finger under lines in the initial report. No evidence of a crime, typed with the easy confidence of finality. Then saw it. A place where the page thinned and the ink had been rubbed away. Under a raking light, letters came back like ghosts. Seen by patrol car 12-4, southbound. She pulled the carbon copy from the state archive. The sentence sat there intact. Unit 12-4 was Hale's cruiser. She checked radio logs. Units 12-1, 12-2, 12-3 chattered through the evening. 12-4 was a dead channel. The duty sheet had a blank where Hale's signature should have been. His report claimed he was at the office. When she found Walt Dempsey in Cedar Forks, he remembered the girl who asked directions and the brown car that followed with no lights. He remembered telling Hale that night. Forensic document examiners looked at the report and said what the page already knew. A razor had taken those words. There's a ledger for county cars. In it, Greer found the Plymouth Fury assigned to Unit 12-4 retired early, March of 1975. Sold to Four Corners salvage with a note, minor front-end collision. Hale's signature sat under the line item. Four Corners still kept paper. From a folder brittle as pastry, the owner pulled a black and white snapshot. Front right bumper dented. A streak across the metal darker than shadow. The lab tested the pigment smudged into the dent and found an organic dye not used on Plymouth Brown, but used in sunburst orange. The Datsun 240 ZS color in the early 70s. A collision model showed how a tall Plymouth could tap the left rear quarter of a low Datsun at 40 miles an hour on a curve without rail and send it off with no clean skid mark to photograph. The search warrant for Hale's house in Pine. Mesa read like any other until you knew the names. He answered his door without surprise. I knew this day would come, he said to no one in particular. In the garage, oil smell and cold concrete. Greer slid open a drawer and found a woman's silver bracelet. Clasp broken, engraving twin to the one in Lila's photo. A hair had caught in the clasp. The lab said it was Hale's. On the floor, a clod of dirt had cured into a lump. On a shelf, a paint flake no bigger than a fingernail gleamed the old orange. The dirt matched the rook's bench below Redstone Bridge. The paint matched the streak in the Plymouth photo. The bracelet carried Hale's hair and Lila's absence in equal measure. On Hale's kitchen table, a Bible lay open, a ribbon marker down a page like a stop sign someone ignored. One thing remained because stories wanted their last door opened. The car. Greer spent 2 days with 1974 aerial photos from the Department of Transportation, hunting the river's shoulder for flaws. South of the bridge, she circled a depression shaped like a breath held too long. The ground-penetrating radar returned a rectangle 3 meters down. A core sample came up sweet with old gas. A backhoe worked with a jeweler's touch. Metal arc from mud. A rounded edge, a bumper, a ghosted Z. The frame number stitched itself together from rust. HS30-234781. DMV spit back the name it had kept on ice. Datsun 240Z, Lila Moreno. Mud poured from the door. Seems like time melting. Bone curved where a body had braced. In a leather purse, a wallet, an ID, a small notebook with LM in a young hand. A shred of red sweater clung to a shoulder, seen the way Lila's roommate had described 36 winters ago. The medical examiner wrote it in plain words. Left side cranial fracture consistent with interior impact, drowning secondary to collision. The state built a 3D reconstruction. No one wanted to watch twice. Lila leaving the station at 7:12. Unit 12 before drifting off its sector. Radio going quiet. The gray curve after mile 27. The brown Plymouth crowding the orange Datsun's lane and tapping the quarter panel. The loss of traction on gravel the width of a finger. The slide and the drop and the water taking the cabin like a hand over a mouth. A figure at the edge of the road, head tilted toward the sound the river makes when it erases. On a November morning in 2011 fog, lay over pine, mesa like breath on glass. The deputies went without sirens. Hale opened the door and offered his wrists. "You dug too deep," he told Greer as she read the warrant. "No," she said. "I read what you already wrote." The press conference that afternoon filled a room with a headline everyone in the county understood before the words were finished. A missing person case from 1974 had cracked, and the fault line ran straight through a retired deputy's commendation. By March, the courthouse found a thaw. The state laid out its case in 4 corners, DNA on hair and blood double-checked by a second lab. The bracelet from Hale's drawer bearing his hair, the orange flake in riverbench dirt. The patrol car's early retirement and paint streak photo, the radio silence and the razor-thin scrape over a sentence that had named Unit 12-4, and Walt Dempsey's steady memory of a brown car without lights. The defense worked the angles of contamination and time. The lab answered with chain of custody and statistics that don't care how long you keep your eyes closed. The jury went out for 4 hours and came back with a word that doesn't fix anything but does set a boundary. Guilty. The judge gave Hale life without parole. He looked at Greer once, not angry, not pleading, like an old man sitting down to wait too late. Afterward, a reporter asked Greer if she felt satisfied. "No one wins," she said. Someone was found. The Morenos held a small service beneath the willows on the Rook's bank. Elena laid flowers on a flat stone and smoothed the edge of her scarf the way she'd once smoothed her daughter's collar. Raphael stood, eyes bright and quiet. The gas station got a new sign and a roof that didn't leak, but the drawer behind the counter still stuck, unless you tug sideways. Some things aren't supposed to open easy. Along Route 147, the county bolted new guardrails, retroreflective faces that winked under headlights like the past trying one last time to be seen. A year later, Greer slid the wooden box back onto a different shelf at eye level. Not as a trophy, not as penance, more like a warning label on a time machine. Her memo went into academy curriculum on evidence integrity. Don't let the lead investigator collect alone. Don't let a sentence vanish under a blade. She lingered in the hum of old neon and thought about how justice rarely arrives in a single bright moment. It accumulates in small sounds. The snap of a seal, the scrape of a straight edge under a line someone tried to erase, the tick of a Polaroid ejecting into air so the light can do its work. On a low hill above Arroyo Vista, a marker went in the ground. Lila Moreno, 1955 to 1974. Underneath, 2 words. Found at last. Not rest in peace. Found, as in a direction. Found, as in a line back to a road that never should have taken her. The case rippled outward in quiet ways. Cadets learned Mesa Verde, so they wouldn't repeat it. The prosecutor's office rewrote its rules for seals. At mile 27, a small sign asked drivers to remember those who didn't make it home. High Plains alumni stood up a Sunburst scholarship for young women in geology, so the color that once meant a missing car could mean tassels and photos in daylight. Redstone Gorge doesn't keep secrets forever. The river is patient, and rock remembers pressure. On dry days, Greer drives the gorge and stands above the bench where the backhoe dug. The Rook slides by with a fine red powder, bleaching the current like rouge. She thinks of a hair that outlived a uniform, of a sentence paired off a page with a razor, of a brown Plymouth carrying the wrong paint on its wound, of a 19-year-old who put a gift on the back seat for her mother and started home. Once she met Elena on the hill, and they talk about the weather, because thank yous fail at that altitude. Winter's late this year, Elena said. Late is fine, Greer answered, as long as it still comes. Wind moves through old pines with a sound like a scratch on metal. Far below, headlights sweep the new rail and fade. If you stand there long enough, you can hear the small click a camera makes when a frame slides out into light. Some images were never truly gone. They were only buried under mud for 36 winters, waiting for someone patient enough to pull them free.